Your ship sliced through the black. She was a small vessel, nimble and dark. You named her the Dewdrop, a fitting name for a smuggler of rain. Alarms whispered a soft warning. An Imperial patrol was near. You kept your hands steady on the controls. The ship's systems were cold. Running silent was your specialty. The Iridian, Imperium wanted water. They guarded every drop with fleets of warships. They bled planets dry for their thirsty elite. But you were a thief of clouds. You carried life in your cargo hold. Millions of pristine raindrops waited in stasis. They were a promise for a dying world. The patrol ship was a predator of steel. It loomed large in your view screen. Its searchlights cut through the void. They swept across asteroid fields. They hunted for ships like yours. Your heart beat a steady rhythm. Fear was a luxury you could not afford. The patrol drew closer, a shark smelling blood. Its scanners washed over your hull. They were designed to find energy signatures. They sought the hum of active life support. But your ship was a ghost. You had learned from the best scavengers. You knew how to play dead among the stars. The light passed. The patrol moved on. You let out a breath you did not know you were holding. You guided the Dewdrop toward a forgotten moon. It was a pock-marked rock named Cinderfall. No one came here anymore. The old mining docks were long abandoned. They were perfect for a quiet arrival. You eased the ship into a cavernous bay. The landing struts settled with a tired groan. Dust motes danced in your landing lights. The air smelled of rust and cold stone. You powered down everything but essential life. The silence here was different. It was not the silence of space. It was the quiet of a place left behind. You unsealed the cockpit. The metal ramp lowered onto the hangar floor. It echoed in the immense darkness. This was a place for secrets. Shadows moved at the edge of your light. These were the station's scavengers. They traded in whispers and spare parts. You saw their eyes glinting from behind wreckage. They knew your ship's signature. They smelled the promise of a rare trade. The rain had its own scent, clean and pure. It was a perfume in a galaxy of dust. You carried a single water canister. It was your token for trade. A figure detached from the shadows. He was tall and wrapped in gray cloth. "The bringer of storms," he rasped. His voice was like grinding stone. You nodded once. "I need fuel," you said, and silence. He looked at the canister. It was more valuable than gold. The crimson market hummed with nervous energy. It was a hollowed-out asteroid, a den for criminals and rebels. You walked its narrow pathways. Glowing signs flickered in alien languages. The air was thick with spices and ozone. Everyone here had something to hide. It made you feel right at home. You sought out a specific broker. His name was Xylos. He dealt in star charts and safe passage. You found him in a dimly lit alcove. He was a thin creature with too many joints. His eyes were like polished obsidian. "You carry a heavy burden?" he hissed. He did not need to see your cargo. The rumor of your arrival traveled fast. You placed the canister on his table. Condensation beaded on its cold surface. Xylos stared at it with hunger. "The Imperium has tightened its grip," he said. "The roots are swarming with drones." You met his gaze without flinching. "I need a path through the Serpent Nebula." He laughed a dry, rattling sound. "That is not a path. It is a graveyard. There is always a way," you countered. "You will provide it." Your voice was low but firm. You had negotiated with pirates and warlords. A greedy broker held no fear for you. He leaned forward, his face a mask of cunning. It will cost you more than a canister. You slid a data chip across the table. It held mining rights to a small moon. He smiled. The deal was made. The Serpent Nebula was a swirl of violet and blue. It was beautiful from a distance. Up close, it was a maze of charged gas. It played tricks on sensors and pilots. This was where the Imperium sent its newest drones. They were automated hunters, relentless and cold. Your new route from Xylos was a thread, a single dangerous path through the chaos. You flew manually, your hands light on the stick. The ship bucked against stellar winds. Outside, clouds of dust glowed with eerie light. They looked like massive, sleeping creatures. You had to admit it was a nice view. If only it wasn't trying to kill you. The dewdrop was built for this kind of flying. It could turn on a whisper. A flicker of movement caught your eye. A patrol drone. It was a silver dart moving through the purple haze. Your ship's skin mimicked the nebula's radiation. You were a chameleon in a cosmic storm. The drone swept its sensors in a wide arc. It was searching for any sign of a ship. You cut the engines for a moment. You drifted like a piece of debris. The drone passed less than a kilometer away. You could see its red optical sensor. It was a single, unblinking eye. You waited, counting the seconds. The silence in the cockpit was absolute. Then, you gently reignited the engines. The drone continued on its patrol route. It had not seen you. You navigated deeper into the nebula's heart. There were more drones ahead. This was only the beginning. Your destination was not a planet. It was a temple, a relic from a time long past. It was built by a species known only as the Architects. They were masters of star science. The temple drifted in the nebula's calm center. It was a place of impossible geometry. It was also the source of your cargo. The temple was carved from a single obsidian asteroid. Its surface was smooth and cold. As you approached, lines of light glowed on its walls. The docking port opened without a command. It was ancient technology. It recognized the unique signature of your ship. The dewdrop was made with salvaged architect tech. It was a key to this forgotten lock. You landed in a chamber of pure silence. The air was still and ancient. In the center of the chamber was a great font. From it, a stream of water flowed upwards. It defied gravity. A column of liquid crystal. It dispersed at the top of the dome. It condensed back into the font below. A perfect, self-sustaining cycle of rain. But as you stepped onto the temple floor, something stirred. The statues lining the walls began to move. They were guardians made of living stone. Their eyes glowed with a soft blue light. They were not aggressive, merely watchful. They were the silent protectors of the font, of Ethel. You were a visitor, but not a threat. They let you pass. You were here to share their gift. The hum of the font filled your mind. It reminded you of home. Your world was once an oasis. It was a green jewel in a black void. You remembered running through fields of grass. You remembered the feeling of cool rain on your skin. That memory was your most precious cargo. It was the reason for this impossible journey. The Iridian Imperium had taken that from you. Their harvesters had drained the seas. They had scorched the forests. They turned your home into a desert planet. The people were left with dust and memories. Your parents had been scientists. They had studied the old legends of the architects. They believed a source of endless water existed. They built the dewdrop from salvaged parts. They gave their lives to find the temple. You were just a child when they left. They never returned. But they left you their ship and their dream. You took up their mission. You would not let your world die of thirst. This was more than smuggling. It was a promise. You filled your stasis tanks from the font. The water was impossibly pure. It shimmered with a faint internal light. You could hear the stone guardians watching you. They did not interfere. Perhaps they understood your purpose. Or perhaps they simply did not care. Their duty was to the font, not to the galaxy. You sealed the tanks and prepared for the long journey back. You trusted the pilot, Ren. He had flown with you on a dozen runs. He knew the risks. He knew the stakes. He met you at a prearranged point, a quiet asteroid field beyond the nebula. You needed him to fly decoy. His ship was faster and noisier. It would draw the patrols away from your route. "The path is clear," he said over the comms. His voice was steady as always. "Xylos gave you a good map. You transferred his payment in pure platinum, a small fortune for a few hours of work. Fly safe, Ren," you said. "You too, Kalen," he replied. "Bring the water home." The words felt hollow. Something was wrong. You followed the new route he provided. It was supposed to be a clear channel, a secret path through Imperial territory. But the stars were not right. The constellations were skewed. A cold dread settled in your stomach. You pulled up the master star chart, the one from Xylos. You compared the two. Ren's map was a lie. He had sold you out. The platinum was not enough. He had traded your life for Imperial gold. The route he gave you led directly into a trap, an uncharted spatial anomaly, a silent rift in the fabric of space. Before you could react, the ship lurched violently. The stars outside vanished. Everything went black. Your ship tumbled through absolute darkness. The sensors were screaming with nonsense data. The view screen showed only static. You had dropped out of normal space. You were in a silent rift, a place where the laws of star science bent and broke. There were no stars here, no light, no hope. You fought the controls. The dewdrop was not responding. It was caught in a current, a river of warped space-time. This was why the Imperium did not patrol here. They did not need to. The rift was a prison. Few ships that entered ever came out. Ren had not just betrayed you. He had sentenced you to death. But your ship was different. It held secrets from the architects. You engaged the auxiliary power. You rerouted energy to the navigational sensors. You needed to find the current's edge. Slowly, faint readings appeared on your screen. They were whispers of energy, faint outlines of the rift's walls. It was like seeing in the dark with your hands. The currents were treacherous. They could tear a ship apart. But they also had a flow, a direction. You realized the rift was not a prison. It was a corridor, a dangerous, hidden shortcut. The Imperium knew it was here. They just did not know how to navigate it. Perhaps you could. This betrayal could become an opportunity, a risky one, but the only one you had. You emerged from the rift with a sickening lurch. The stars blazed back into view. But you were not alone. A fleet of Imperial frigates was waiting. They had formed a blockade. Ren's betrayal was complete. They knew exactly where you would appear. Red warning lights flashed across your console. Their weapon systems were locked onto you. "Unidentified vessel." A cold voice boomed on the comms. "Surrender your cargo and prepare to be boarded." You looked at the squadron of enemy ships. There were at least 6 of them. The Dewdrop was a smuggler's ship. It was fast and stealthy. It was not a warship. A direct fight was suicide. So you would not give them a direct fight. You smiled. Xylos, the broker, had sold you more than a map. He had sold you a piece of banned technology, a storm seed. It was a device that could agitate a nebula. It could turn calm gas clouds into a raging firestorm. You were no longer in the Serpent Nebula, but there was a small gas pocket nearby. You angled your ship toward the colorful cloud. The frigates followed, firing warning shots. They bracketed your ship with bolts of plasma. You pushed the engines to their limit. You just needed to get inside the cloud. The Storm Seed was a desperate gambit. It could destroy you as easily as it could them, but it was better than surrender. You plunged into the gas cloud. The ship shuddered as you deployed the seed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the space around you ignited. The cloud erupted into a chaotic firestorm. Tendrils of superheated gas lashed out. The Imperial frigates were blinded. Their sensors were overwhelmed by the stellar chaos. They began firing wildly. They were firing at each other. You navigated through the storm you had created. It was like flying through the heart of a sun. Your shields were screaming under the strain. But the Architect technology held. The enemy ships were in disarray. You slipped past their blockade in the confusion. You left them to the mercy of your firestorm. You reached your dying home world at last. Its skies were a hazy brown. The ground below was cracked and barren. This was the world you remembered as a green paradise. The sight of it hardened your resolve. You flew low over the great central desert. This was once a vast, vibrant ocean. Now it was a sea of sand. You positioned the ship over the deepest part of the basin. This was the moment of truth. The stasis fields holding the water were delicate. A full release was irreversible. You took a deep breath. You keyed in the command. The cargo bay doors opened, and you let it rain. It was not a drizzle. It was a deluge, a torrent of pure, clean water. The cargo burst into trillions of crystal droplets. They fell from the sky like a gift from the stars. For the first time in a generation, rain fell on your world. The parched earth drank greedily. The air filled with the impossible scent of wet soil. Below, people emerged from the underground shelters. They stared at the sky in disbelief. They held out their hands to feel the drops. Children who had only known dust tasted rain for the first time. The great basin began to fill. A lake was forming where a desert had been. It was a start. It was hope. The news of your return spread like wildfire. They called you the Rainbringer, the Storm Rider. You were a myth made real. Survivors from other colonies sent messages. They hailed you as a hero, a symbol of defiance against the Iridian Imperium. You landed the dewdrop near the newly formed lake. The crowd that greeted you was small, but their gratitude was immeasurable. An old woman touched your arm. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You have given us back our future," she whispered. You saw the faces in the crowd. They were thin and worn, but now they had hope in their eyes. You smiled a tired, genuine smile. This single act would not save them. The Imperium would still be out there. The fight was far from over. But for today, it was a victory. You watched families splashing in the new water. You heard the sound of laughter, a sound that had been rare for too long. You knew that every drop of rain was a rebellion. Every newly formed river was a declaration of war. And you were just getting started. One day of rain was good. A lifetime of it would be better. The Iridian Imperium was furious. They had lost you in the firestorm. They had lost their prize. Now, their scouts swarmed the outer systems. They were searching for any trace of your ship. They put a bounty on your head, a price so high it tempted even the most loyal allies. You had become the Empire's most wanted smuggler, a fact that you found vaguely amusing. You could not stay on your homeworld. Your presence would only bring an invasion. You had to disappear. You said your goodbyes in secret. You promised you would return, with more water and more hope. You took the dewdrop back into the blackness of space, back to the familiar embrace of the void. You needed a place to hide, a place to repair and resupply. You flew toward a sector known as the Ghost Nebula. It was a maze of asteroids and stellar dust, a perfect hiding place for a small ship. You navigated the winding corridors of rock and shadow. The Imperial scouts were clumsy. Their large ships could not follow you here. You found a hollowed-out moonlet, a hidden cove known only to a few smugglers. You powered down your ship. You were a ghost again, a whisper in the static between worlds. You let the Empire search. You let them waste their fuel and their time. You knew that to fight a great power, you had to be patient, and you had to be smart. A transmission flickered onto your screen. It was heavily encrypted. The signal was coming from deep within the nebula. You were wary of another trap, but you answered the call. The face that appeared was a veteran rebel, a commander from the Free Colonies fleet. His name was Jorik. "We saw what you did," he said. His voice was rough, but his eyes were kind. "You gave hope to a dozen worlds with one act." He told you they had been fighting the Imperium for years, a scattered resistance with little to unify them. "You have become a symbol, Rainbringer, a symbol we can rally behind." He made you an offer, an alliance. His fleet would provide you with protection. They would escort you on your runs. In return, your deliveries would fuel their rebellion. They would help you bring water to every world suffering under the Empire. You looked at the commander's determined face. You saw the same fire that burned in you. You did not hesitate. "I accept," you said. For the first time, you were not alone. You had allies. You had a fleet at your back. The fight for water had just become much bigger. You were no longer just a smuggler. You were a revolutionary. And the Empire was about to face a storm it could not control. Your story spread across the systems. It was told in hushed tones in dusty taverns. It was whispered in the corridors of Imperial starships. The tale of the lone smuggler who stole rain from the gods, who faced down an Imperial fleet, and brought life back to a dead world. The legend grew with every telling. Children on desert planets looked up at the sky. They dreamed of clouds and wet streets. They drew pictures of your ship, the Dewdrop, on their walls. You had given them more than water. You had given them a new myth, a story where the small could defy the powerful, where one person could make a difference. The Imperium could police the shipping lanes, but they could not police dreams. Your name became a code word for hope, a secret greeting among rebels. "The rain is coming," they would say. It was a promise of a better future, a future you were now fighting to build. You had wanted to save your home, but now you had a chance to save them all. A legacy was being written, not in history books, but in the hearts of the thirsty. Your ship was repaired and resupplied. The rebel fleet waited for your signal. Your new allies were ready. They had provided you with new charts, maps of other architect temples, other hidden fonts of water scattered across the galaxy. The source you had found was not the only one. It was merely the first. You stood on the bridge of the Dewdrop. The star charts glowed before you. They showed paths into the unknown, into regions of space marked as uncharted. The Empire was powerful, but the galaxy was vast. There were more secrets hidden in the dark than they could ever imagine, and you were going to find them. You charted a new course, one that led beyond the edge of known maps. It was a path filled with danger, But it was also filled with promise. The fight was not over. The journey had just begun. You engaged the engines. The little ship hummed with power. The stars awaited their next secret delivery. The horizon was endless.